Have you seen the pictures of Zion Williamson looking super fit this offseason? Yeah, we've been here before, but I'll tell you why those pictures have bigger implications on the offense in the season for the Pelicans this year than you might think. It's a new episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with you on this Thursday. We got a Zion-centric show for the first two segments here. Then we're going to talk a little Herb Jones getting his due, getting his respect in the third. Tomorrow on Locked On Pelicans, by the way, for the everydayers, the quest for 50 wins. One and two real ways they can improve and make that a pretty realistic goal for him this season. I'll tell you in tomorrow's show. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. I'm going to become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. We are the #1 Pelicans podcast for a reason. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by eBay Motors. From brakes to exhaust kits and beyond, eBay Motors has 122 million parts to keep your vehicle alive. Visit ebaymotors.com. Okay, let's get into everything here and look at that picture. Well, we're not going to look at it. You've probably seen the photo of Zion Williamson at his camp for kids. And he looks incredible. Looks thinner and more in shape than we've really ever seen from him. And there was an article I saw on Sports Illustrated where it was his stepdad, Lee Anderson, saying that Zion weighs 281 pounds right now and wants to be 272. I don't know why it's that specific number, but 272 when the season starts. You know, he was listed at 285 pounds at Duke. So right now he's lighter than his college playing weight, if that number is to be believed. And he's going to be about 10, 13 pounds less than that when the regular season begins. So a couple of things with this. I have 3-4 points here that I think are important about this. So first and foremost, yes, we've been here before, right? We do this every offseason, and I get sucked into it too. We see Zion running sprints out during Saints training camp, and you're like, my God, it's hot in New Orleans, and that's what he's doing. Guys getting after it. You know, we're constantly seeing a new version of Zion 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. I don't actually remember what number we're on right now. The everydayers or longtime listeners of Locked On Pelicans can help me with that. But we're getting it again. You know, it shows that he's taking the offseason conditioning seriously. And he's been steadily doing this the past couple of years. And this is a good thing. You know, sometimes it just takes people to a little while to mature to kind of figure out what they need to do. LeBron was not the LeBron James we see now, taking care of his body in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, Tom Brady didn't the Tom Brady method or whatever it is he uses. His first couple of years in the league, it takes a while to kind of build to that point, and then you kind of figure it out. It clicks into place, and that becomes your new norm. And I think we're seeing that a little bit with Zion Williamson here. He's taking it seriously. He took it seriously last summer, but didn't do necessarily everything that he needed because sometimes it takes him, during the season to get into true shape, right? We kind of saw this last year where he reportedly lost 20 pounds during the season. Well, guess what? He's already there. We didn't really see him get serious until after, December, after that in-season tournament loss, the disaster of a game. We did an angry cast after it. The loss to the Los Angeles Lakers in Las Vegas. That's when he really kind of committed and turned things around. He's already doing it now. That means on game 1 of the regular season, game 1 of preseason, he's going to be ready to go. That means the Pelicans get off to a better start and hopefully elevate their playoff chances because of it. I've said this before. We're going to say it right now. This is exactly what you want to see from him. Him being lighter than we've seen, is going to help keep him healthy. The weight on all of those jumps with the force that he lands, can wear you down. Less of that, playing lighter. That's been the whole concern about the weight, is the injuries and his longevity. Go back to the playoff series against the Phoenix Suns where Zion wanted to play, and he released that video of him dunking, and then he landed on the ground. And one of the things people were like, oh, this is fake, it's doctored, is you see the court like bend underneath his feet. Now, practice courts build that in so that when you land on him, it doesn't hurt you as much. But that's how much force that the dude plays with, that he can bend the court a little bit when he lands. Playing lighter is going to take some of that pressure off your knees, your hamstrings, all of those things. But the biggest takeaway I have from this is I hope this lets him be a little bit more agile. He's a pretty agile player as is. But the one thing that I want him to work on the most to add to his game is a better handle, more so than a jumper. The moves on the way to the rim. Teams wall him off. And this is going to build to the point that I want to make in the next segment of the show here too. Teams wall him off. We know this, right? I've got an incredible stat to share with you in the next segment about that. Teams wall him off. And what he normally does is just tries to plow through the wall. And it works, right? He's big, he's strong. He still looks big and strong. Like, he doesn't look like skinny or stick or anything like that. He just looks lighter, but clearly as powerful. Teams wall him off, and he tries to go right through them. But being lighter, having maybe a little bit more side-to-side agility, maybe helps you kind of go around those walls. Having more moves in his bag, dribble moves, things like that, and he has a pretty good bit of them, allows him to get around that and score at the rim where he's at his best. That's what gets me the most excited about seeing that photo. If he can get to the rim more so, or more consistently, and not have to go through bodies where, look, they don't call the fouls, right? We've seen it. I've done the numbers. We did a study on an episode of Locked On Pelicans last year, 2 years ago, where it's like, no, he goes to the line a lot, but he actually should go about like 20% more. Well, if they're not going to award you those free throws, well, then get around the players, get around the walls, and score at the rim. And if this lets him kind of do some of that, right, his move is from the perimeter, just getting the ball and attacking with the explosiveness, and it's like a freight train going downhill. He also does that where he can get the ball down low and has a pretty quick spin move to turn and go, which is a great thing too. Adding more moves to your bag because you're a little bit lighter and you can kind of maneuver a little bit easier is going to reduce some turnovers, and it's going to let him score at the rim where he's at his best. Yes, add the little baby jumper in too, but keep trying to score at the rim, and if you can figure out a way to do that more effectively, that's ultimately what's going to lead him to having the most success, and thus the Pelicans having the most success. But him being at this weight does have a knock-on effect on the offense and the roster, and that's going to mean that spacing is even more key. But there's a stat that's mildly concerning, and it shapes how the Pelicans need to run their offense next season and who they need to play. So let's talk about that coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by my favorite eBay Motors. Look, I work on all of my cars, and I just make it easy by going to eBay Motors to buy the parts that I want. With over 122 million parts for your vehicle, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. Do you want speed, power, style, utility, roof racks, superchargers, better brakes? All of those things over at eBay Motors. Whether it's an old car or a new car, you're going to find the part that you're looking for, which makes it my number one when it comes to doing that. And I love working on all my cars. So with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Don't be me where you order from somewhere else because you think it's better. It's a little bit cheaper, but not really. And then your hood doesn't close or the wheel doesn't go on the car. That was a fun adventure that I had. So with eBay Motors, I keep going there because their prices are great. You're burning rubber, not cash. So with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP. So keep your ride or die alive over at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're the number one Pelicans podcast coming to you Monday through Friday, breaking down everything you want to know about this team. Become an everyday or listen Monday through Friday. I know it's been a little bit inconsistent the past 2-3 weeks, but it'll get a little bit more consistent in about 2 weeks as we gear up for the regular season. We'll be back to 5 days a week before you know it. And now there's no offseason in the NBA, so your second listen needs to be the Locked On NBA podcast, which provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less, including myself, on there every single Wednesday. No one keeps you as informed and entertained as Locked On NBA, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's keep talking about Zion Williamson and what, him being lighter in the weight is going to do for this team. So one, it's just good for him to be the best version of himself. That's what we want to see. But it is going to impact the way teams defend. Teams are going to look at that and be like, oh, Zion's going to be good this year. When we play the Pelicans, we need to have the right game plan coming in. And it's going to be to stop Zion Williamson. And unfortunately, this just got closed in my tabs for whatever reason. But it comes from @CrumpledJumper on Twitter here. And it was a stat that I thought was great because it shows the distance that team rim protection is from the basket here. So where did it just go? Here we go. How far away from the basket on average was the other team's rim protector standing when these offenses attempted a shot last season? The Celtics were by far the best. Rim protectors stood about 11 feet 4 inches away from the basket versus the Celtics. So you're sucking guys out of the paint, getting them from the paint to the perimeter. The Pelicans were below average. The average was 9 feet. And the Pelicans here, there isn't a specific number, but it's probably about like 8 feet, 8 inches, something along those lines. So significantly different. Think about that. Let's call it 8 feet, 4 inches to make the numbers easy with the Celtics here. That's a 3-foot difference, right? A yard. Think about the spacing when it comes to that. Now, the Pelicans are slightly below average on here for a couple of reasons. One, because of Zion, right? Well, when you have Zion, wall off the rim. It's really as simple as that. He is the threat. And this is why it comes to something that if you're a longtime listener of the show, I've said repeatedly. You can't really space the court for Zion Williamson. You just have to make teams pay. Because of how effective he is at the rim, this is what it does to you. For these teams that have like elite big men that play close to the basket or put pressure on the rim protectors are naturally going to be closer to the rim, right? That's the way it just kind of works. And when you're a good three-point shooting team or you don't have those kind of elite guys, they've got to play further out. Look at the Minnesota Timberwolves being below the Pelicans here. That's a team with two very good big men, right? Sacramento Kings with Domantas Sabonis. The right at average is the Lakers and the Denver Nuggets, the way teams play them. This makes kind of perfect sense. If you have good three-point shooting, though, it spaces the court a little bit more. So part of that is Zion Williamson. The other part of it is the Pelicans weren't, exactly a threat from three last year. They took, on average, where'd the number go? 32.6 three-point attempts per game. That was 24th in the league. There's no reason to defend the Pelicans on the perimeter because that number's low. And look, that number is also low because Zion Williamson is using the majority of possessions, the majority of shots, right? And he plays at the rim. So when Zion takes 15.6 shots per game and only 0.3 of them are three-point attempts, yeah, you should defend the rim. So that's part of this. That's built into this. But that means that the Pelicans now need more three-point shooting. You need to space the court if you're going to go Zion-centric. And when he looks like this, they're going to be Zion-centric. So if you're all in on Zion, you need shooting. It's really that simple. You need to launch more threes. That should, not saying it will, but should influence who Willie Green plays. CJ McCollum was elite at catch-and-shoot threes last season. He's going to get minutes, right? Herb Jones knocked him down from the corner last year. Daniel Tice can shoot a little bit. DeJounte Murray has volume on his threes and is willing to take them. They all are going to play. Tice probably just because he's a center and you need to play one by default. But this should mean a bigger role for someone like Trey Murphy, who's willing to launch threes, 7.8 per game last year. If you extrapolate that out a little bit to per 36 minutes, that's 9.5 three-point attempts per game. He shot 38%. That's a really good number. And some of those threes are particularly deep. If he has the ball and he's standing 30 feet from the basket, you do need to commit a defender to him. And that defender 30 feet away from the rim is going to have no attempt to help on Zion Williamson should he get the ball and drive and attack the basket. Really as simple as that. So you can kind of give Trey Murphy a larger role. It's why they want to find a way for him to be in the starting lineup or get heavy minutes with Zion Williamson. And with his rebounding being better, maybe improving on defense, maybe adding another move or two when he drives to the basket, Trey is going to have a big role. So they should be playing him more. They need to trend upward in terms of 3-point attempts, just full stop. Brandon Ingram, this is kind of the big question here. You knew we were going to get to this point. How is he going to adjust? Is he going to adjust his shot profile? It's about fitting in a little bit more. Otherwise, do you have to kind of maybe taper his minutes down? Because you're going to need the shooting around Zion Williamson, and all of the data says that needs to happen. Him and his role are what's going to maybe make or break what they want to do offensively. They can still be a good offense if Ingram plays like he did last season. Basically, if he just beats Brandon Ingram, right? They had the 11th best offense last year. It's not bad, but it's not an elite number. So they can still be good, but if they want to be at elite, it needs to be more threes. And that means Brandon Ingram needs to take more catch and shoot threes, more pull-up threes. Whatever it is, that number needs to go from 24th to middle of the pack. They're never, ever going to be top 10 in three-point shooting when you have Zion Williamson on the team and he doesn't take threes. But you don't need him taking threes because he's elite at what he does. Get to the rim. That's why we don't ask him to take more threes, but instead look for Brandon Ingram to do it because he's shown he can do it. And if Ingram was truly elite at scoring at the rim, I'd say don't shoot threes, keep trying to do that. But he can do everything. So he needs to, right? It also probably means that Hawkins should be in the rotation to start. Now, he needs to impact the game in other areas too, but he should be in the rotation because you need shooting, you need offense. They need to strike a little bit of a better balance. We'll talk more about this in tomorrow's show, but they were the 6th, 7th best defense last season, 11th best offense. That's pretty good. They have the 6th best net rating. But there needs to be a little bit more balance because a lot of those blown leads in the fourth quarter, meant that they were skewing too defensively and teams came back. It's one of the reasons why they weren't able to come back in fourth quarters. You didn't have the offense to get it done. You got to outscore your opponent. And if the defense first approach was working, the data and the numbers and last season would have gone very differently, but it didn't. We have enough evidence here. So a lot of this is going to be on Willie Green trying to get out of his own way a little bit, or the Pelicans finding ways to mitigate that, I think. Willie Green, I don't think it's necessarily a make or break year for him, but he definitely needs to show some growth, and that growth is going to come with just skewing a little bit more offensively and trying to score more points. When we talk about the quest for 50 wins tomorrow, this is going to be one of the big talking points. There's two areas, I think. Not screwing up in the fourth quarter and winning your home games. You should shoot better at home. So skew offensively and blow some teams out that way. We've seen that the defense is going to be good no matter what, but you can't run these non-spacing units out there because it just kills what they're trying to do. And yes, you have DeJounte Murray now who can maybe organize you in the fourth quarter, and that'll help. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But it comes down to Zion, right? And when he's looking like he looks right now, build off of that. Go all in off of that. And that's what I want to see this Pelicans team do. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below on YouTube. Look, one of the things we'll talk about, and I'll mention it again later, is, when you look at the 2K ratings coming out, Zion Williamson is in the top 5 in terms of driving dunks. Yeah. Leverage that. If that is one of your strengths, build around it rather than kind of putting it off to the side or just making it a regular part of the offense. We've talked a lot about game plans, and what you do is you identify what you're good at and then you kind of force that on the other team. Cool. This is what Zion does. He's elite at it. When people are like, oh, he's easy to stop, he's easy to defend. Dude wouldn't average what he averages for his career if that was the case. So you've got to lean into this a little bit more, I think. And if you do that, I think really good things are going to end up happening for this team. The offense is going to get better. They're going to win more games. Simple as that. But to do that, spacing is going to be super important next season. Find a way to maximize it. They're never going to be top 10 in three-point shot attempts per game. Can you get to 15? I'll take 16. Bottom half of the league, but you're still right there in the middle. So coming up next, Herb Jones getting some respect. We love to see it. Let's break that down. Coming here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different from you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. And all you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So go put $5 down on the Pelicans' opening night game at home against the Chicago Bulls, 3.5-point favorites. No reason not to. Go put $5 down on that. You'll win it in the future, hopefully. And then you get a free trial, a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel, also the official sports betting partner of Locked On. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And now for your second listen, Locked On Saints just had the open practice at Williamson Stadium with Tulane Roll Wave. They're going to be good. I really don't know. Ross Jackson's kind of getting me to buy him, but what's going to happen with the offensive line and Trevor Penning? He's making sense of everything black and gold over at the Locked On Saints podcast, your second listen today. So let's talk a little bit about Herb Jones as we wrap up the show here. You know, some of the numbers and ratings are coming out from NBA 2K, and while this isn't, always the most accurate thing, it does kind of show some respect for Herb Jones around the league, and I think that's an important thing. Herb is ranked in the top 5 as one of the top 5 perimeter defenders on NBA 2K for this coming year's release of the game. Good is what I have to say to that. He should be. I think it's just he's finally getting the respect that he deserves. He kind of broke through this past year by making the all-defensive team when he should have made it the 2 years prior, to be perfectly honest with you. He made the first team, which was good. He finished 5th in Defensive Player of the Year voting and was the top non-center, and that award usually goes to centers, big men, who get the blocks. But he has been so good that he's just finally getting the respect around the league that he deserves. And we love it. I don't know if Herb cares about this whatsoever because he's Herb Jones and that's just who he is. But we want to see the guys that we root for going and doing great things. And what I also, love is, look, he's going to be number 2 next year, not number 5, just happily giving up his number to DeJounte Murray, being a good teammate. And, this is how he wins Defensive Player of the Year. I don't know if it'll happen this year. I don't know if it'll truly ever happen, but it takes kind of like breaking through to get there. And he finally has that. One of the things I'd said about Nikola Jokic with, the MVP debate and everything about him, and you look at 2 years ago when Embiid won it, and looking back, like, it probably should have gone to Jokic that year, but people didn't feel comfortable giving him 3 straight MVPs or whatever it was because he didn't win an NBA title or hadn't won a title yet. So 2 years ago, whenever it was. He needed to have that kind of breakthrough because, you win 3 straight MVPs, you're kind of an all-time great, but if you don't have a title, are you? Then he won the title, and it just kind of freed everyone up, and then he promptly won the MVP award, right? Kind of as simple as that, it feels like. So this is a situation where it feels like Herb Jones has kind of finally had that breakthrough where, like, everyone's like, okay, we're allowed to vote for him for these things. We're allowed to say that he's this good. And from there, you just kind of earn that respect, and it's just built in. Same thing for Drew Holiday. He made the all-defensive team, not out of nowhere, but it was like something that we hadn't been truly thinking about, and then he just repeatedly made it every year. Once you make one of those awards, they're like, oh, yeah, he should be on there because he was on it last year. Now he's getting highly rated in NBA 2K in a way that he should be. This is how he kind of earns respect around the league, and it's like you break through, you kind of punch through that glass ceiling, which isn't maybe the correct way to phrase this, but then you can just kind of do whatever. And that's Herb Jones right now. And we love to see that. That's what we want to see from the star players here, and Herb is finally getting that respect. He's going to get a lot of love this season. And he's going to be even better, I think. Now you also have DeJounte Murray, so another guy who can be elite defensively with you in the backcourt. And that frees Herb Jones up a little bit. Maybe you want to put him on the guard and allows Herb Jones to kind of play on the wing a little bit more. Or Herb Jones at the point of attack. They ever actually get a rim protector, or if Eve Nisi develops into one, and you let Herb Jones roam a little bit, oh boy, watch out. So I'm excited for what he's going to be doing this season. I don't know. He's just one of my favorite players on the team. I'm planning on buying a new Herb Jones jersey this season. So love to see it. Things you just love to see. So we're ending on a positive note here in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This has been the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. See y'all tomorrow. We're going to talk about trying to win 50 games.